And there are more in the waiting room. Okay. So there we go.
We cannot see you.
You cannot see me?
No.
I can.
Why not?
I'm on
Oh,
gallery.
yes, something happened. Yes,
You
you're
are
right.
blank.
Raise your camera. Raise your
Something-
camera from the computer.
Now it's better, right? Now it's better?
Right.
Thank you. Now we can see you.
Yes.
Yes, was my mistake. Here we go. Now I'm focused, so that's working. Here we go. That's also working, so stop that. Okay, close the waiting room. So everybody who will be late can just join. Okay, here I am. I also will start the recording here. So it will be now recorded, also recorded. So, and I will mute you all, right? You all will be muted. Yeah, so 5 minutes late. Sorry for that. Okay, so yeah, welcome to today's history tour. My name is Tomek. Friends call me Tomek. Full name is Tomasz Grzegorz Katarzyniec, which is pretty difficult. But I think the more we do these tours, the more and more you know me, right? There will be less and less new friends. But if you're new, you're very, very welcome. I'm giving history tours in Berlin, Germany, since 15 years, something like that. And my focus is on the history of Jehovah's Witnesses. I live in Berlin, and Berlin is, for me, the most interesting city in the world if we talk about the history of the last 1.5 years. 150, 150. If you talk about the last 150 years, for me, Berlin is the most interesting. If we talk about the 2000 years, then of course we talk about Rome and stuff, right? And there are also Athens, Greece, and Egypt, and Israel, and all the places. Absolutely right. But if we talk about the last 150, I think Berlin is the most interesting because we have here how Jehovah's Witnesses understand the King of the North from 1870 to 1945. We have the so-called Roaring Twenties, the Germans call it the Golden Twenties. We have the Nazi time. And this is what I did the last weeks, right? I showed you on my tours, on my history tours here on Zoom, the history of Jehovah's Witnesses, how they start to exist in Germany, what difficulties they had during the First World War, what difficulties they had in the 20s, and mostly we focused about the Nazi time. We talked about Sachsenhausen, we talked about Dachau, we talked about the first female concentration camp, we talked about the Death March, and last week I really enjoyed that. For everybody who was there last week, right? We just talked. There was no real tour last week. We just talked about the whole Nazi time. What was your impressions? What were the feelings and stuff like that? So right now, I showed you all my tours about the Nazi time, and all of them are also recorded and also available on YouTube. And this here right now is also now live on YouTube, so you can watch that also on YouTube later. And there will be more more tours about the Nazi history and Jehovah's Witnesses in the future. But all I already showed. That's why we will talk today about something different. We will not talk really about the Nazis, or maybe in the beginning a little bit, because we will talk today about the time after the Second World War. We will talk about how Germany looked like 1945 in May, when the Nazis lost finally the war. How Berlin looked like, how was the life? You have to imagine everything is destroyed. But the focus will be again Jehovah's Witnesses. So we will talk about the witnesses survived, but how? And how they managed to live after 12 years of persecution. That's the topic today. But then we will also see that in 1950, in the eastern part of Germany, Jehovah's Witnesses, the same Jehovah's Witnesses that have been persecuted in Germany by the Nazis, the same people are now persecuted, sometimes even by the same people. But now these persecutors are not called Nazis. These persecutors are now called communists. They just changed the name, but doing the same bad stuff. So this is the topic of today's tour. So I very welcome you. And this tour will be about 1 hour. So this is part 1. Tomorrow, same time, part 2. Next week, Sunday, part 3. Next week, Monday, part 4. And then part 5 and part 6. So all of that is 6 parts that we will talk about the Nazi time, about the communist time and Jehovah's Witnesses. So if I made everything right, you should see right now the title, History of JW Tour 4.1. That was in the old times 4.1. The persecution of Jehovah's Witnesses in the GDR. So, and after that 1 hour, I'm happy to answer questions. So if you have questions, if you want to know something, if there's something that you didn't understood or something that you think, hey, I would like to know more about that topic, please feel free. I'm very, very happy to answer all the questions that you have. So after the tour, we will do this question answer. Yeah, but this tour we will finish in 50 minutes. Okay. And it should be also sound in a second. Yes, okay, this works too. So as I said, we will start in the year 1945, and the exact date that we talk about is the 8th of May, 1945. Finally, the Second World War ends in Europe, not in the world. We know, unfortunately, that the war is still going on in Asia. Japan, we know about the 2 atomic bombs, this complete senseless thing. So the war is still going on. But in Germany, in Europe, the war is over, finally. So what the people say, they are freed from the Nazis. But yeah, how does Germany looks like? And it looks exactly like that. It's destroyed. You don't see a lot of men. If you see men, then they are old men, or they are disabled. They are, yeah, got injured in the war, or they're kids, boys. So what or who is survivor, or who survived that Second World War? Who stayed loyal to what they believed? Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses. We have here on the right side Max Liebster, and then his later wife Simon Arnold Liebster. We have on the left side and down and the bottom Erich Frost, the man who wrote a song in a concentration camp and that Jehovah's Witnesses sing until today, and other man and woman who survived the death march. Konrad Franke on the right side. In the middle, we have August and Heinrich Dickmann. Heinrich survived. August, as you remember from the tour about Sachsenhausen, was murdered as the very first conscientious objector ever. And in Germany, there's a memorial for him remembering this. And it's very interesting what a historian wrote in 1969, Michael H. Cater. He wrote that the Third Reich knew how to deal with internal resistance only with brutal force, and even then was unable to overcome the forces of rebellion among the German people, and was unable, and that's interesting, to master the problem of the Bible students from 1933 to 1945. The Jehovah's Witnesses emerged from the period of persecution 1945 weakened, but not broken in spirit. And altogether, all these witnesses who have been in prison, like in the top left, this is Horst and Hermine Schmidt. We talked about especially him and his mom about the stumbling stones and heard his story. All these witnesses have been together, were sentenced to serve almost 14,000 years in prison. More than 2,000 of them had been put to concentration camps, and these 2,000 were altogether 8,000 years in concentration camps. And if you don't remember, Jehovah's Witnesses were just 0.03% of all the inhabitants in Germany. But very, very interesting is what Hermine said. Hermine said, I was arrested when I was 17. Then I was sent to the Stutthof extermination camp. But in that long and terrible year, my God, who can save, has turned every curse into a blessing. I wouldn't want to miss any of these experiences because they showed me that I can serve a living God. And this sentence is very, very interesting. I wouldn't want to miss. Jehovah's Witnesses are not happy when they're persecuted. Jehovah's Witnesses don't want to die. Jehovah's Witnesses don't want to be in prison. They don't want to be tortured. No. They are peaceful people. They want to live in peace. They want to have a happy life. They don't want to disturb other people and also want to be disturbed in their life. So why Hermine is saying that? Because her focus was not on the persecution. Her focus is what she learned. What she said, because they showed me that I can serve a living God. And guess what? Hermine Schmidt was the very last Jehovah's Witness who survived the concentration camp. She died this year in January as the last Jehovah. So she had a long and a good life and very, very happy woman. So she wrote a book, and there's also an audiobook from her, but only in German, and she's reading that book. That's the really, really great thing, and you can really hear her joy, and that's what helped her to survive this bad time. And I choose that quote because it really showed the thinking of the most of Jehovah's. Doesn't mean that they didn't have bad times or depression or were crying. Yes, they did. Of course. Of course. But I hope you get this, right? It's the thing how they were looking at that. There were also bad times they experienced and crying after that, especially Horst, her husband. But it was a proof that their God Jehovah helped them, and that's the amazing thing. That's really that amazing thing what helped them to survive that place. So immediately after the war, even in a place like that, the branch of Jehovah's Witnesses in Switzerland, they were in contact with the witnesses here in Germany, and they wrote a letter and they said that Erich Frost from Leipzig is now authorized to take over the direction of things in your territory, talking about Germany. It's in the letter saying, Brother Frost will, as far as possible, regularly report to the president about the progress of the publishing work. And in July, there was a huge announcement And it's saying also that the preaching work under the direction of the new president of the society, Brother Nathan Omanor, has been more thoroughly organized than ever and is making great progress. So just think about that. In a place like that, what's the focus? Their witnesses were preaching. And they could organize talks over the radio in different cities in whole Germany, in West Germany, in South Germany, in North Germany, so that the public attention was also to the people, to the kingdom, to the kingdom message, even in a difficult place like this. Because we have to understand, everybody's living here, right? All religions, Jehovah's Witnesses, Catholics, some Jews who survived. Everybody has now the same circumstances, and for everybody it's difficult. So also the witnesses also had to rebuild their houses. They have to help to rebuild that country. But look at that. It's only women. And we even have a term for that. We learn at school in Germany, we call these women the woman of ruins, because these women rebuilded Germany. They really rebuilt Germany. And Jehovah's Witnesses were helping in that case, of course, in rebuilding also Germany. But the focus was to give the people hope, to help them. Hey, that is over. There's hope for a future, that this will never happen again. And the people like to listen. We will see this, how a huge impact had the preaching to the people. So Germany was not really divided at that place yet. The Allies, so Britain, America, and Russian, right? The Russians are coming from the east, from the right side. The American from the south, and the British from the north, and also to the Americans, D-Day, of course. And they divided Germany in 4 administration zones together with France on the left side, south, west, south. And they gave Germany new borders. So part of it went to Poland, right? And Poland gained some places back, and this is very, very important. This, you have to remember that, because this would change whole Germany. Very fast, Jehovah's Witnesses get the branch back in Magdeburg, which is close in Berlin, which is in the Russian zone. But they also opened a new branch, a new office in Wiesbaden. As you can see, it's far away. It's an American area, an American zone. Why? Because it's not really that reason, but today we know it was a good idea. They had the opportunity, and they could get some offices, and they used one floor, great. But it was very, very good, because then the Russians are starting to fight against Jehovah's Witnesses. So it's just 1 year after the war, and the Russians are fighting. They are fighting them. And I got also a message right now. I know that a lot of American people lived at that time in Wiesbaden, because serving in the military, there were a lot of Americans there. So you've been very close to the second branch of Jehovah's Witnesses. So this is how Berlin looked like. So can you imagine how difficult it is to organize, for example, a congregation, a meeting, or a convention in a place like that? It's impossible, because there's no room, right? There's no hole. Everything is destroyed. So, and then there's this lack of sleeping accommodation, lack of food. So what Jehovah's Witnesses did, they called it conventions, but in all around Germany, they organized small congregations, small meetings, so that at least the people could get to know and also that Germany is divided in these 4 military zones. you have to understand that the Russians had different ideas of order, different rules than the Americans or the British or the French. So when you try to organize in Germany a meeting and you organize it in the Russian military zone, and they say, or let's say in the American, let's say in the American, say, yeah, of course, we know Jehovah's Witnesses, we know them from our state, no problem. You can do that. And you go with the same idea to the Russians, and they say, hey, who are you? We don't know you. We put you also in the gulag. We would also put you. No, you see, it was very, very difficult. But even that difficult thing, they made it. They managed to organize all these different meetings in 10 different cities all around Germany. But they want to have a convention. So the idea was Nuremberg. The idea was Nuremberg. And arrangements were made for the 28th and 29th of September. And the American military government had finally offered to Jehovah's Witnesses to use that Zeppelin visa in Nuremberg. So now you say, wait, Tomek, we can read. You said 28th and 29th, but here it's written 28th to the 30th of September. And of course, that's also true. But please let me explain. At the first moment, it was only Saturday and Sunday, 28th, 29th September. But something changed in the meantime. You know Nuremberg from a different, let's call it, event. You know Nuremberg from the Nuremberg trials, right? On the left side, starting all these high men under the regime of the Nazis or Adolf Hitler, the so-called war criminals. There's a trial against them, and they have to be sentenced on the 23rd of September. So 1 week before the witnesses had the convention. You have also to understand that in the origin idea of that trial was to do this in Berlin. The Russians wanted to do that in Berlin, but the Americans, they already realized, okay, we will be not friends. The Americans and the Russians, Cold War. We will talk about this in the next weeks. So the Americans made it, no, we want that trial on our military zone. So Nuremberg. So it changed the place, but the trial also took a little bit longer. And when was the end, the last day should be the 23rd, it was the 30th of September. So the witnesses decided, when they heard that, wait. The same time where we will have our convention of Jehovah's Witnesses who have been persecuted by the Nazis, in the same time there will be the sentence of these people in the same city who tried to kill us. Let's do 1 day longer. Let's also do the 30th. So that's when the witnesses start to prepare, and they said, okay, we do a 3-day, and we will do also the 30th of November. So when these guys, these men, some of them sentenced to prison, some of them sentenced to death, some of them even innocent, but that's a political thing. I will not get into this, not at that tour. When this happened, can you imagine what these 6,000 assembled Jehovah's Witnesses felt? If not, then you just have to read what Erich Frost said on that convention. Just being able to experience this day, which is just a preview of the triumph of God's people over the enemies at the Battle of Armageddon, was worth 9 years in a concentration camp. Erich Frost was for 9 years in a concentration camp. 12 years of Nazi time, and 9 years of them he was in a camp. So he could say that. Think about, is there any other person whoever said it was worth to be 9 years in a concentration camp, in all my research, I didn't find anybody else except Jehovah's Witnesses. Why? What's the difference of Jehovah's Witnesses and all the other poor people who have been persecuted with what's wrong? Persecuting the Jewish people, the homosexual, the Sinti and Roma, all of them. This was wrong. But what's the difference about Jehovah's Witnesses? Jehovah's Witnesses, what's saying? It was a preview of the triumph of us, God's people. And that's something special. Can you imagine to be on that place, on the Zeppelin Wiese, and to know that just 2 miles away, these people who are telling everybody the Nazi will be for 1,000 years, the Third Reich will be for 1,000 years, and when we're saying this brew will be destroyed, the witnesses will be all destroyed. And now there are 6,000 of them and say, nope. We won. Jehovah's Witnesses won against the Nazis. For 100% sure. They exist until today. And the Nazis lost everything. And you know what? Adolf Hitler said once a sentence, give me 30 years and you will not recognize Germany anymore. He just needed 12. And yes, you don't recognize Germany. But not in the way that he was talking about. Germany is destroyed. And that's the work of the Nazis. The destroyed Germany is the work of them. This is what we have to remember. That's the Nazi work. Complete destruction. But even in a place like that, Jehovah's Witnesses in Berlin could make or organize on 7 different places in the same weekend a talk talking about Christ's in the fire oven, talking about Jehovah's Witnesses, telling the people what Jehovah's Witnesses did and how they survived. So now it's 2 years, not almost 2 years after the war, and it's still not getting better. It's very cold. So this is the Tiergarten, animal garden translated. It's the biggest park in Europe. So if you come to Germany, I will take you to that place. One of my favorite places in whole Germany. You know that from tour number 1. But the thing is, the winters are so cold. The people, of course, they went to their garden, the biggest garden park in Europe, and look at that. No trees. Okay, 1. Let me just stop that video in a second. So maybe you can see it. Take a look in the middle. Do you see that building in the middle? Do you know what that is? That's the Brandenburg Gate. That's the most famous sightseeing tourist place in the whole Berlin. And if you are today in the park, there's no chance to see it because there are so many trees. But no, the people chopped down all that because it was very, very cold. Look at that. They used that. So of course, Jehovah's Witnesses also suffered. They also suffered cold, right? Preaching will not help you to get warm. Let's be honest. You also need fire. So the president of Jehovah's Witnesses at the time, Nathan O'Manor, and 2 other Jehovah's Witnesses, Henschel and Covington, they were able to visit the Jehovah's Witnesses in Germany, and then he realized, oh, they need help. So Switzerland was helping a lot. The Swiss branch was sending a lot of food and stuff and clothes and to their brothers and sisters, to their friends, to help them. But it still was not enough. You can take a look how life really looked like. So when Brother Noah was going back to the States, he had a talk in California in a convention, and then he was telling to the Californian Jehovah's Witnesses people, your brothers and sisters in Germany needs help. They need money, they need food, they need clothing, and so please, if it's possible, donate for them. Do you know what? Spontaneously, that weekend, $140,000. Please remember, it's 1947. 1947, $140,000. It's a little bit more worth than today. A little bit much more. So I have another number for you. I have another number for you. The problem is food. So there was an organization called the CARE organization, and that organization were selling special packages, packages that was the most important things that you need to survive, right? So talking about yeah, you see a coffee, about soap, but also fat stuff, milk, right, to gain fat again that you needed. So with this $140,000, Jehovah's Witnesses could buy 22,000 of these packages and send them to Germany. So it was more than Jehovah's Witnesses existed. So it was more than one person, and 220 tons of clothing, suits, dresses, underwear, shoes for men, women, and children were sent from the American friends to Germany, to the witnesses. And I have to tell you, yeah, wait, let's go back. I have to tell you a story about that. I have to tell you about the cabbages. Let's stop here. That's a funny story. I like that. So it's not in my notes. I told that story once, so maybe one of you heard that. So the thing is, who should get these care packages? So because Jehovah's Witnesses were known what they did in the Nazi time, how they survived and everything, they were a little bit afraid that if they would say, okay, everybody who is a member of Jehovah's Witnesses, who maybe is studying with the witnesses, the Bible, can get a package, they were afraid, okay, everybody will come, okay, I want to study with you the Bible, give me the package, and then goodbye. So they made the decision, only baptized Jehovah's Witnesses can get this. So everybody who don't know that, it's not easy to get baptized as a Jehovah's Witness. It's not that you just get 3 drops on your head and thank you very much and now you're a witness. No, this takes time. You need to study, you need to read the Bible, you need to change your life. You have to stop this, you have to stop that. And so if you say today, I want to become a Jehovah's Witness, you will not become tomorrow a Jehovah's Witness. It's impossible. It takes months, at least 6, I would say. And if you do this, then you're very, very fast. So that was the idea, that nobody will take advantage to get these packages, and then the real Jehovah's Witnesses will not get some of them, right? So they said, no, you have to be baptized. So I have a friend who, family of 7, father, mother, 5 kids. 5, and if I remember well, I don't want to lie, but if I remember well, 5 boys. So dad is going to the place where the witness is giving the packages back, and he's coming back, and he got how many packages? 2. Because the father and the mother were baptized Jehovah's Witnesses, but the boys didn't. They were raised as Jehovah's Witnesses for years, yeah, and they also survived the Nazi time and everything, but they were not baptized yet. So dad is coming back with these 2 packages. Okay, so it's not enough. So he's looking at the kids and he's asking, okay, boys, who wants to get baptized? And he sees 5 hands. And because they were already studying the Bible, they got baptized the next day. And then they got also then 5 packages. And all 5 witnesses, 2 of them until today, and the other who already died to the end. So yeah, sometimes I would say that the intentions of becoming a Jehovah's Witnesses could be hunger, yeah. But in that case, it also worked. Why not? Why not? These boys were faithful Jehovah's Witnesses. I like that story. I really like that. Please, it's 1947. It's cold. You're hungry. Of course, you believe in Jehovah because your parents survived the Nazi time. So it was just they were already the witnesses of their God, Jehovah, in their heart. They just didn't make the step. So it was very easy. And yeah, it was to get some food, at that time, get the care package donated by Californian Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah, but still things. Now we are 3 years after the war, and we have a huge money problem. Which, yeah, what happens? Trading, trading. So money has no value. So you trade cigarettes mostly. You trade stuff for food, for whatever. Trading was the most important thing, and in that time, Jehovah's Witnesses were still trying to organize a convention. And the first one, you remember, was in Nuremberg, but that was for Hamburg people from the north, was far away. So, hey, let's try to organize in the middle, right in the middle of Germany. So maybe then more Jehovah's Witnesses have the chance to get there. So the idea was 20th of June, 48. No, sorry, no. To organize a convention, forget the date. To organize a convention in the summer 1948 in Kassel. But then something happened, something that the witnesses did not plan, and that is the 20th of June, 48, a currency reform, the Marshall Plan, and I call it the first battle of the Cold War. So this is what I say, for me, that's the official beginning of the war between America and Russia. Of the war between, as Jehovah's Witnesses understand to the prophecy of Daniel, between the new king of the north, before that was Germany, now Soviet Union, 1948, and the old king of the south, the United States, together with Britain. Why? Why I call this the first battle of the Cold War? So Cold War means first they were not really fighting each other like it was in the Second World War. It was a war made never on the territory of America or Russia. It was always on territories on other places. And also sometimes it was a war of nerves, it was a war on money, it was a cyber war later and stuff like that, right? Some real battles, Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, of course, definitely, right? So it starts here. What's happening? What is the currency reform? So, of course, America and Russia, they had a deal. But because they became enemies, the Americans didn't, they changed. They decided to create a new German currency, the very famous West German Deutschmark. The older ones maybe remember that, a very, very strong currency. A lot of Germans until today are not happy that this don't exist today. So the thing is that in just one night, all the money is not worth anymore. And every German in the British, American, and French military zone got 40 Deutschmarks. And now you can start. But it was not a deal with the Russians. So what did the Russians? Let's listen to the news, to the BBC.
This is New York, a special bulletin. Berlin has been cut off from the free world.
Ici Paris, radiodiffusion française. Toutes les voies de communication en direction de Berlin sont coupées.
This is London calling. Berlin, the former German capital, is cut off from all communications. What has happened in Berlin?
Yes. What has happened in Berlin? The Russians were angry. They said to the Americans, guys, you broke the deal, the contract. So they closed Berlin. It's not the wall. It's not the Berlin Wall. We got to that. They closed so no train, no bus, nothing could get into Berlin. And the idea was, if you Americans will not change what you did, if you not stop the currency thing, then the people would die of hunger. But the Americans, they have a credo. They don't negotiate with terrorists or whatever. They just do their thing. They think they are the best. I'm talking about the government, right? Not about people. Also, okay, stop, Tomek. So you know what I'm talking about. So the American government had an idea. We will send airplanes to Berlin, but not to bomb the city again. No, to send food to that place. And this is how it took for a year. And I'll go back here, right? It took for a year. And for this 1 year, the American government supplied Berlin every day with hundreds of flights with food, with stuff, and so on. American soldiers, American pilots died for that. So why I'm showing you that picture is very, very important. Do you see who are these Germans who are so happy about it? Children, right? Children. So let's stop here again. I have to explain that. That's something very, very interesting. But what I like about history is to understand the thinking of people, right? You see today somebody, and you talk with that person, and you think, wow, that guy is weird. But then you listen to his story, you listen to his childhood, you listen what he experienced, and then you say, oh, okay, he's not weird. I understand why he is how he is, because this and that happened to his family or whatever. And that's what's great about history. If you met somebody and you think, bah, I don't like him, get to know him better or her. Get to know better. Try to understand. And I promise you, you will realize in 99%, you will be surprised and say, wow, oh, sorry that I thought like that. I completely understand why you're saying this, why you're doing that. It's because of your history. So why I showed you that picture of these kids? To explain to you what was the German view on America for a very, very long time. When my parents came to Germany in '88, come from Poland, I was 6 years old, to Germany, and then so I raised in schools in Germany. So yeah, German is my first language. As a young person, my life goal was at least once in my lifetime visit America. America is the country. At least America is great. This is what all Germans thought until the 90s. Does it sound weird? Maybe for you Americans, yes. But remember that. In the thinking of these boys, who or what were the Americans? Saviors. The Americans saved us from the bad Nazis. My parents, these kids, right? My parents, my grandparents, they were Nazis, and the Americans came and they stopped it. They saved us. And then when the bad Russian came and he wants to starve us, who came and saved us? With again the Americans. So these boys, when they grew up and became adults, and their mind was, yes, America saved me twice. If not America, I would die. So that's why we in Germany, we loved America. And even things like Korea and Vietnam, yeah, but come on, it's our America, right? They saved us. It changed in the 2000s. It changed completely. Now Germany has a completely different opinion on America, but that's now politics. It changed with 9/11, what was horrible, and then reacting what happens later, these wars, and then also Germans and the new generation, my generation, right? They realized when we got older, 16, 17. So when 9/11 happened, I was 19, 20 years old. Then our generation were thinking, oh, okay, there's so many lies, and they're lying here and they're lying there, and a lot of movies came out, spy movies and whatever. So that changed. But I think it makes sense why these kids were huge fan of America. Makes sense. Absolutely. Because it's true. America saved, definitely. These German kids. The American soldier came and gave them a bar of chocolate when nobody had chocolate. So, of course, this American soldier is the hero for me, right? He gave me chocolate. And all this thinking and all that time and all this situation, this currency reform, everybody got 40 marks. That's it. Jehovah's Witnesses are organizing, or let's say this, are trying to organize a convention. Because what's happening now? You got only 40 bucks. Now you think twice if you spend that money to get to Kassel or if you buy bread for your family. But nevertheless, Jehovah's Witnesses were organizing, and yes, they made it to organize a huge convention. They worked so hard for that. They managed that visitors, Jehovah's Witnesses who visited Kassel, could sleep in other places. So it was 23rd, 4th, and 5th, 3 days convention. You see how many came, thousands came. And my favorite story is from a Jehovah's Witness from Munich who had a colony of bees. And she said, my colony of bees was endangered since I had no sugar and could not afford to buy any. But to me, Kassel, the convention, was more important. So he spent the money not for the sugar, just in case, okay, why is the sugar? So because if we should put sugar, the bees would make more honey. That honey she could sell and then she could make for a living, right? But no, she decided, nope, I will spend the money to get to Kassel to the convention. And she's saying, upon my return, I found that my bees had worked so zealously that I was able to harvest double what normally and that year. That's my favorite story about Kassel. But yeah, we talk about Germany. Berlin. Let's go back to Berlin. Berlin. What about Berlin? Do we get a convention in Berlin? Right? We had a Nuremberg riot. We had in Kassel. We had these small meetings in Berlin. But no, the Berlin Jehovah's Witnesses, they want also a huge convention. And if you have been in Berlin at the Olympic Stadium, maybe 98 or 2009 or 2019. So you didn't know that you were very close to a very, very historical place. It's called the Waldbühne. So my wife and I, so that's of course a recording, it's not live. We cycled there, but we said, no, we will not cycle the whole way. No, let's take the subway or let's take the S-Bahn. We call it S-Bahn. So that's the S like schnell. I'm sure that you know from some, I don't know, Second World War movies on, right? No, schneller, schneller. That's the German word for fast, faster. So it's a fast train. It's not a fast train. It's a Stadtbahn, city train, something like that. It's so the underground is underground and this is overground. I don't know. So Viola and I decided, nope, we will not only cycle, we will take the train. Because that's the same route until today that Jehovah's Witnesses also took to get there. To get to that place close to Olympic Stadium called the Waldbühne. It exists until today. You have there very great music concert, classic, rock and roll, whatever. We've been there a few times. It's really nice. And I always like it. Every time when I'm there for a concert, right, a normal concert, I'm always thinking about Jehovah's Witnesses, that they managed to have their very first convention in 48 there in Berlin. So what's happening? We have, even it was difficult, even we have two different currencies. There's so East and West mark, but still you have these stamps. So it's life is still not easy. Nothing really still works, but more and more people became Jehovah's Witnesses in Germany here. So everybody is trying, yeah, to survive somehow. I think yeah, circuit overseers are trying to visit places by bike because, yeah, there were no cars. So I'm not sure if you saw that interview. I interviewed one of them. He's still alive, Walter Friedrich. He's 94. He lives in Berlin, and he told me a story how. So I asked him, okay, so Walter, if there was nothing, how did you manage to get a bike? So I didn't. So I got, when I was in the city, right, and I worked there as a circuit overseer. Um, just to let you know, he was 19 years old. Circuit overseer, fantastic. I like that. So he got a bike from somebody of the Jehovah's Witnesses in that city, and then he used that bike, cycled to the next city, right? And then somebody managed to get that bike back to the other city, to the owner. And then from that city, he got the bike from another owner. So he didn't have a bike. He didn't have a bike. Definitely not. It's amazing story of Walter Friedrich, how the Stasi, we will talk about that later. Also, who is the Stasi and everything. Made to survive. But I want to talk about, yeah, how more and more Jehovah's Witnesses. So my wife and I, we are still on the way. So I just want to show you how western part of Berlin looks like. We are still on the way to that place where the very first convention was, and the famous Olympic Stadium that Adolf Hitler built, and where 1936 were also the famous Olympic Games, which is really crazy. Because at that time everybody came to visit Germany and nobody realized that Jews are persecuted because the Nazis sold themselves to the world as a, yeah, great nation, right? Working nation and so on. But there are some other great stuff, Jesse Owens and whatever. It's really, really interesting. I love that, to see how, yeah, for the Americans, for the Germans, a black guy showed that they are better. Really cool. But in 1949, the witnesses had a convention here, and Erich Frost said these sentences. Let me read that. Is Bolshevism, communists, better than other systems? Do the communists believe they must finish what Hitler started? We are just as unafraid of the communists as we were of the Nazis. Why is Erich saying that? What's happening? What's the problem? Already in 1947, 48, 49, so we talk about 2, 3, 4 years after the persecution of the Nazis, the Russian communists in the Russian military zone in Germany persecuted Jehovah's Witnesses. And who was running at that time the Russian country? Stalin, a dictator who killed more people than Adolf Hitler did. Nobody, people like to forget. Stalin killed more people than Adolf Hitler did. And Erich Frost was not afraid to say that to everybody. And this was even in the news. It was sent in the radio station RIAS, Radio in American Zone, as zone for German. And that radio was very, very important. This radio station was put by the Americans in West Berlin, So they could spread messages also in the Russian military zone. And also Jehovah's Witnesses could use that radio station for talks. And this is how every show finished of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Hier ist Rias Berlin. Eine freie Stimme der freien Welt.
Im Programm von Rias 1 hörten Sie eine Morgenandacht der Zeugen Jehovas. Das Manuskript der Sendung schrieb Willi Pohl. Am Mikrofon hörten Sie Helmut Krüger. Dazu sang der Chor der Zeugen Jehovas.
Because the problem is, then on 7th of October 1949, now we have two Germany. We have the eastern part of Germany and the western part. We have the eastern that is called the GDR, the German Democratic Republic. And there's no difference between the Nazis. It's just the name. It's just a different ideology. The Nazis are the very far right wing. The communists are the very far left wing. But it is the same thing. It's just something under a different name. It's trying to force the people to do what they want. How did the Jehovah's Witnesses manage? Let's take a look first on the numbers. So when the Nazis start to rule in Germany, we have a little bit more than 19,000 Jehovah's Witnesses in Germany. So that's the beginning of the Nazi ruling. When the war ends, 56% less. 8.5 Jehovah's Witnesses only. Interesting, just 2 years later, we are more than before, 20,000. In 1949, when GDR started to exist, East Germany, we have the number of almost 44,000 Jehovah's Witnesses. And the last number that is official is 52,000. Why the last number official? Because then in the GDR, Jehovah's Witnesses are banned. And this happens in the year 1950, what will be the topic of tomorrow. So thank you very much for joining today. Please stay for a second. I want to show you something, but tomorrow, same time, 5 p.m. New York time, I will show you what happened at that moment, 1950, when Jehovah's Witnesses are also banned. And we hear incredible stories of some Jehovah's Witnesses, how they managed their very first years, which are always the most difficult thing. So hope to see you tomorrow. I will stop the recording here. I still keep it a little bit on YouTube. I just want to show you something also, though not only that, not only that we will see us tomorrow. Let me show you my, my camera again stopped working, right? Again, I don't know why this is happening. Okay. So first thing that I want to show you is this, right? Burn the curtain. It's tomorrow. Also on YouTube like today, and also next Sunday, next Monday. So for 3 weekends, this is weekend number 1, next weekend and the third weekend. And then we will have again a meeting and talk about this all together. So this is the one thing. But I also want to make advertise for a very, very special thing for me. It's this one. I invite you to think about doing holidays next year in Germany. I offer a 9 days tour trip through Germany in 3 different options. It's a budget tour that's with trains and cheaper hotels and make it as cheap as possible. Then a private luxury tour. This is just 7 people maximum plus me, no more. It's a very, very private tour in our own bus. I'm driving. We're very flexible and we can travel. or in a big group, big bus, 40 people, 45 people. And what do we will see? I made here, you have the entry, you can, we will visit Berlin the first 2 days, then we will see Sachsenhausen, then we will see Ravensbrück, the female concentration camp. Then we will follow the footsteps of the death march of Joseph. We will see the forest where they slept. I will show you where was the campfire of them. So that's the first part of the tour, focusing on the history of Jehovah's Witnesses. And please remember, I will not make you depressing. It's encouraging. And the second part of the tour, we will go north. We will see the Baltic Sea, Hamburg, the Highlands, and back to Berlin with a beer and food tour. So relaxing, see the people, the food, and stuff like that. So if you want to join that, if you want to come next year, please come. Please write me. Let's talk about the dates. There are different prices. On my website, there are more information. So my website is historyofjw.tours, right? Is here. You see also here the website historyofjw.tours. Please welcome. I do this for a living, all these tours. Also, this is everything what I do for a living. So also for that tour, your donations are also very, very welcome. Or I'd say not only welcome, needed. Needed. So if you go on my website, historyofjw.tours, we have here a green button called donation, or you have here a button buy me a coffee, right? You click on that blue button, buy me a coffee, a website opens where you have the possibility to support with a coffee. Could be $5, could be one, it's your decision, could be 1 million. You decide how much. You can do this monthly, you can do this one time. I have also a shop where I put some digital books that you can print about the tours that I did. Oh wait, 13 already sold. That's cool. And 8 of them. So if you want to also say, okay, I don't really want to give a donation, but I support you with this book. So that's also great. There are stories, paintings about what we talked about. So yeah, this is how you can do. And also, if you want to get in contact, if you go on my website, there's a WhatsApp box. You can write me a message. And here you have here the red one, Germany tour. You click on it, and then you have also more information about that tour that next year want to come. So history of jw.tours, history of jw.tours, please welcome. Would be great, would be fantastic. I will stop right now the what do I stop? YouTube. The YouTube screening right now. And then we will move on to question and answer. So if you have a question, I'm happy to answer you. So everybody who's watching on YouTube right now, please come back on the Zoom. Please come back on the Zoom place if you want a question. If not, see you next time. So let's stop